Welcome to Arrows Veeam Partner Academy. My name is Hasse Dalberg, and I am a channel manager at Arrow DK. This Veeam Partner Academy is a little different because it is a joint Nordic Partner Academy between Arrow in Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Denmark. That also means that we have been able to ramp it up a bit by inviting none other than Melissa Palmer from Veeam's Product Strategy. But before Melissa gets to take over the screen, I would just like to go through the agenda for today. When I'm done in a minute, Melissa will start the Partner Academy by presenting for the first hour or so. You're more than welcome to ask questions in the chat because we've set aside about 10 minutes for questions in the end of Melissa's presentation. After the Q&A, there will be a Norwegian breakout session with Gisle and Dag covering Linux proxy and one-time password. There will be a Danish breakout with Martin Plesner, who will give you a demo of some of the new features in V11. And then there will be a Finnish breakout with Tommy, Juha, and Petri and Janne covering, I think, also V11 topics. And that's why we'll have a 5-minute break in order for you to join the relevant breakout rooms that will pop up on your screen, and you will have to select the desired country you want to join. And you can also get some coffee in the 5 minutes. So without further ado, Melissa, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen real quick here. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for having me today as your guest. My name is Melissa Palmer. I'm a senior technologist in the product strategy group here at Veeam. And I focus on pretty much the whole Veeam portfolio. I'm really excited to tell you about some of the amazing new features in version 11 and beyond today. When you have questions, just throw them in the chat. I'll try to pause and take a look a couple times while I'm presenting, and then we will have time at the end as well. So I'll stop like every section, I'll go through the chat, see what we have, and then at the end we have time for additional Q&A. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to recap 2020 releases and 2021 releases. Veeam has really just, the release cadence has gone so much faster, and we have so many products now in the market that I just want to make sure that you all as partners are aware of the current offerings and what's coming in the future. A special bonus I have for you all today is we're actually going to take a look at the rest of the 2021 roadmap and see what we have on the radar coming as well. So you'll be well equipped when you speak to your customers to know what's coming down the pipeline at Veeam. Keep in mind that that is an NDA slide. Then we're going to take a closer look at some of Veeam Backup and Replication V11's key features. I'm going to go a little deeper into some of the main features, and then we'll also talk about some of the add-on products to Veeam Backup and Replication 11 because we've restructured some things with this launch. And we'll briefly go over some of the other features that your customers might find interesting. Now, of course, this is not everything in Veeam Backup and Replication. There's this what's new document that's available on the web when you download Veeam Backup and Replication, and that is just pages and pages of new features. I can't cover everything for you today, but what I do want to try to focus on are the things that will make a difference for your customers and help you as well. And then, of course, like I said, I'm going to pause a couple of times during the presentation and look at the questions, and then we'll have Q&A time at the end as well. So let's get started. So 2020 recap. 2020 was also a very, very big year at Veeam. It was our most responsive delivery cadence in company history. From the product strategy perspective, one of the things that we do is we're really a liaison between our customers and our product management teams at Veeam, and we also work closely with product marketing to make sure that everything is on message for our customers and accurate technically as well. So we have been so busy with all of these releases in 2020. So of course we had V10, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with, Veeam Backup for AHV, Service Provider Console v4. The cloud native products were very big last year as well, right? So we had Azure come out, Veeam Backup for Azure, then Veeam Backup for AWS 2 and 3, Veeam Agent for Solaris, Veeam Availability Orchestrator version 3, Agent for AIX, and then of course a new version of Veeam Backup for Microsoft Office 365. So that was our payload in 2020, a ton of great products, especially our foray into the cloud native space. When we talk about product themes for 2021, you're going to see a couple of different things coming out of Veeam the rest of the year. We're going to have a gigantic focus on cloud, which you'll see with the release cadence coming up for some of our cloud products, right? And the way we're doing things in backup and replication as well. Another big thing you'll hear us talk about is security, right? So that hardened Linux repository in V11, we do a lot with ransomware. We're going to be focusing on security. And then, as I'm sure you're all aware, Veeam acquired a company called Kasten, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So you're going to see us really start focus on containers, right? Our goal is at Veeam is to be the single provider of data protection for our customers, which is why we're focusing on this area. Beyond meeting their traditional data-centered level needs, we want to make sure that we can protect them in the cloud, we can keep them secure, and as they move into looking at containers, that we have support for them there as well. So just a kind of reminder of our backup solutions. When we're talking about data protection, these are the things that we can protect and integrate with application level integration, right? So of course, now you see Kubernetes there. We have Microsoft Teams. That was a big feature of Office 365. Veeam Backup for Office 365 is one of our biggest sellers, and that cloud native data protection, as well as, you know, your VMware, your Hyper-V, your AHV, all that great stuff. And then it's about cloud data management, right? We want to be able to manage data no matter where it is in life cycle and what our customer needs are. So that's backup and replication. That is monitoring and analytics with Veeam One. Governance and compliance is built into so many of our products. Cloud mobility, the ability to restore, protect, and move cloud workloads. And then, of course, automation and orchestration with a special focus on disaster recovery. And really, when we talk about protecting all this data, backup and replication is the engine that drives it all. And then we're building upon that, right? So we have the storage integration APIs. We have the ability to integrate into public cloud now, right? So now if you're deploying some of our cloud native products, you can actually manage them from Veeam Backup and Replication from that console and monitor them in Veeam One. So we're also all about unifying that experience for our customers as well. Now, everything we talk about on this slide pretty much has had some sort of release recently. So let's talk about where we are today. We had a massive release with Veeam Availability Suite version 11. So Availability Suite is Veeam Backup and Replication in Veeam One. Continuous data protection, which we're going to talk about. That was our big feature, and that actually is integrated across multiple Veeam products. So you'll get that in backup and replication, you'll get that in Veeam One, and you'll get that in Veeam Availability Orchestrator, which has been renamed to Veeam Disaster Recovery Orchestrator as well. And that's a really great way with these add-on products to not only solve your customers' problems, but make your deal a little bigger too. So we're going to spend some time talking about add-ons as well. Veeam Agents, I mean, this is another big thing, agent for Mac, right? I have been working from home for the last year, and I've been fortunate that I've only dropped a couple of cups of coffee on my laptop, and it survived each and every time. Some people aren't as lucky, right? Things happen at home. You know, I have little kids too. They like to try to grab my laptop. With Veeam Agent for Mac, now we can protect those Mac-based end user devices, right? So those MacBooks and those Mac towers, that's huge for many organizations. It's something our customers have asked us for a very long time. We'll talk more about the Orchestrator product, but being able to support CDP. Veeam Backup for GCP. So we've talked a lot in the last year about Veeam Backup for Azure and Veeam Backup for AWS. Now we have that functionality for Google Cloud Platform as well. We have Veeam Backup for Azure at version 2, and that is now integrated with VBR, which means you can manage your jobs through the Veeam VBR console, and you can monitor them in Veeam 1. And of course, Service Provider Console version 5. Again, we're all about integrating with those other features and products for our service provider customers and large enterprises as well. Now I want to take a deeper dive into some of our VBR version 11 features. And like I said, there are literally hundreds of features in each release of Veeam Backup and Replication, but I want to focus on the ones that I think are most important from a Veeam perspective and most important for your customers from an aspect for you to talk to them about something new, get that important time on their calendar to speak with them during these times, and features that are going to benefit them and benefit new customers as well. So here is what we are going to talk about today. We're going to talk a little bit more about Veeam CDP. We're going to talk about the Hardened Linux repository, talk a little bit more about archive storage adding to Sober, expanded instant recovery functionality, and then a little bit about Veeam powered BAS and DRAS with the service provider console. So we're going to dive a little deeper into each of these features. CDP is probably where we're going to spend the most of our time. We're all about data protection at Veeam, and quite candidly, one of our biggest competitors when we come to the near zero mission critical workload is Zerto. And now that we have CDP and it's integrated between One and Orchestrator, it's a great opportunity to displace Zerto for many reasons. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this technology, how it works, and more importantly, how it integrates across Veeam products to really provide a fantastic solution for disaster recovery and data protection for your customers. So this is about resiliency for critical workloads, near zero RPOs, and I've tested this. It's near zero. It's a couple seconds. We're measuring in seconds, not even minutes here. Minimize that data loss and recover to the latest point in time. So why did we do this? Why did Veeam spend so much time on CDP? I mean, it's one of those things that we have said it's coming for years. Veeam is really, really dedicated to providing high quality products, right? So we're not going to release something unless it is absolutely ready for consumption, which is really why CDP took so long, right? It's got some really heavy VMware level integration, and we wanted to make sure that it was right for our customers. So why CDP, right? It's all about business continuity. We need to be able to meet internal and external SLAs and be able to measure it and prove that we're meeting with it. And, a lot of times people think that protecting tier 1 workloads is really expensive and really complex. The great thing about CDP is that if you've ever created a Veeam backup job or a Veeam replica job, you're ready to create a CDP data protection policy. It all uses the same UI, the same wizard, and the same engine. It's really, really simple to do. I will say that there are a couple of prerequisites that are documented really well in the Veeam Help Center, right? So you're going to need a special CDP proxy. It has CPU and RAM minimums, and it's really important that you deploy proxies that meet those minimums for optimal performance. You will also need to install a VIB on ESXi host you're going to run CDP on. And again, these are all prerequisites that are documented. So there's a little bit of work up front to get your environment ready, or your customer's environment, for CDP. But once you meet your prerequisites, it is very, very simple to configure and use. So we're going to eliminate downtime and minimize data loss with built-in continuous data protection. We're talking about immediate recoveries to the latest desired point in time, right? Like with any other Veeam product, you can pick your restore point. I can say most recent, or I can go back in time if I need to. The failover is near instantaneous to the latest state or your favorite state. For ultra low RPO, again, we're measuring this in seconds in many cases, not even minutes. It is simple to use. We're using existing infrastructure with the exception of deploying those proxies, which can even be VMs, right? We don't need to put in a whole new infrastructure. We don't need to make a lot of changes to make this happen. And each policy can have its own RPO based on your business requirements, right? There's many different ways to do this to meet your customers' requirements. It's not a one size fits all solution. You might have, some ultra low RPOs in the seconds. Maybe you have a 30-second RPO for some applications. And maybe others, you still want that really low RTO. So you might have more of a 2 to 5 minute RPO. You can do all of that with Veeam CDP. So let's dive a little bit deeper into how it actually works, right? So there's a couple things to think about. When you configure your policy, there's two things. There's short-term retention and long-term retention, right? So you'll configure those both. These are the latest point in times. These are what are like more like second type things, right? 20 seconds example. So then we can also configure longer term retention points and make them application aware. So maybe you have a 2-minute RPO for short term and an hour RPO for long term. Again, it's fully customizable. And the actual failover functionality, whether you're manually doing it in VBR or you're using the Orchestrator product to do it for you and provide some additional benefits, works very, very similarly to existing replication jobs. So if a customer has ever used a Veeam replica, this is very, very similar. So let's talk about the differences between a regular Veeam replica and a CDP replica. And you can see that there are a lot of similarities, but a couple key differences. So a planned failover, you can't do that with CDP at this time, but what you could do would be to use Veeam Disaster Recovery Orchestrator and schedule a plan to execute and failover CDP for you. So it's not native in Veeam Backup and Replication, but you could do it with Orchestrator. There is no Sure Replica / Data Labs functionality for CDP. Can't do file level recovery. Again, you're recovering that whole VM. You're just flipping the VM that's sitting there waiting online. But most of the other functionality is there. And you cannot actually use Cloud Connect at this time either. So a couple of subtle differences to be aware now, but they do function very similarly to a regular Veeam replica. So a lot of customers ask me, when do I actually use a CDP replica instead of a regular Veeam replica? And these are really for mission critical workloads, right? These are for the things that need their lowest and RTO and RPO. Remember, replicas are a little bit expensive from a resource standpoint because we basically have a copy of that virtual machine sitting there in a disaster recovery or a secondary site waiting, right? So couple things you're going to need. You're obviously going to need more storage to store it, but you're also going to need to have the available CPU cycles and memory on your vSphere environment when it needs to start up. So you're going to have that capacity earmarked or reserved somehow, right? Because you want it to be high performing should you need to fail over if you want it to fail like production. So from a resource perspective, it is a little expensive, which is why most people are using it for only the top 5% of mission critical workloads. You would use this in place of today's regular Veeam replication, right? We can get much lower RPOs and RTOs with it, and instead of asynchronous storage replication. I actually used to be an SE for NetApp and a solutions architect for NetApp and the FlexPod solution they have. And I did a lot of SnapMirror, and I can't tell you how many customers I had doing a 5-minute SnapMirror where we would have issues with change rates of data and the SnapMirror is falling all over each other, right? So yes, they always say you can get a 5-minute RPO with SnapMirror, but the truth of the matter is there's a lot more to it that goes into it than just setting a SnapMirror for every 5 minutes. So this would replace some of the things you might be doing today to try to achieve those ultra low RPOs and RTOs. So now I want to take a couple minutes to talk about something I like to call the CDP3, right? So backup and replication, Veeam One, and Veeam Disaster Recovery Orchestrator. So Veeam Disaster Recovery Orchestrator used to be known as Veeam Availability Orchestrator. We're in the process of rebranding it. So if you download version 4, you will still see VAO in the UI, but anything you see on Veeam.com and from a marketing perspective, you're going to see VDRO, Veeam Disaster Recovery Orchestrator. And with V11, Veeam One and Orchestrator are now classified as add-ons to Veeam Backup and Replication. And we'll talk about that a little more later on from a pricing perspective. But the fact of the matter is, when it comes to CDP and those ultra mission critical workloads, these 3 products work in perfect harmony. When we talk about being able to compete against Zerto now, personally, I would bring all 3 products to the table So why would I do that? One, you have the backup and replication engine, right? The engine of the car that is giving you your near zero RPOs and your long and term retention points. That's fantastic. And that technology is amazing. However, you still need to manually go in there and hit that failover button. And we're going to fail over the replica, and that's great. We have Veeam 1 that has built-in features and functionality to monitor CDP. So it's got 4 out-of-the-box alarms and a number of reports. And of course, you can customize alarms and reports in Veeam 1 to make sure that your backup and replication environment is performing as expected. For example, one big thing we measure in CDP is your SLA. Are you meeting your RPO and your SLA? If you're not, there's a reason for it, right? Maybe you're having some kind of network problem, or you're having some kind of vSphere problem. Veeam 1 will let you know if something is going on, that your data is not being protected and you're not meeting your RPO. It will let you know. You can report on it, you can alarm on it, you can alert on it. So it's a great way not only to keep track of CDP and how it's doing, but to keep track of the rest of your Veeam backup and replication environment as well. Now we can add Veeam Disaster Recovery Orchestrator on top of that. And a lot of people like to ask me, well, backup and replication, I can go in there and hit the button. What's the difference between doing that and Orchestrator? Specifically for CDP, we have a couple of special features and functionality. One, we have something called a readiness check. And what that readiness check does is it looks at your destination environment and makes sure you're already ready to always ready to fail over. With CDP specifically, it's going to look at your RPO and your SLA and on a daily basis, let you know if you're meeting them. It's going to dynamically generate a report, which you can actually have emailed to key stakeholders that will say in plain language, yes, you are meeting your RPO and your SLA, or no, you're not, and here's why, so you can go and fix it. So from a perspective of making sure that you're always ready for failover, it will do that for you as well. It also will generate a full disaster recovery plan for you for your application, letting you know each and everything every step done on your VM. And more importantly, it has a full audit log in there. So if someone logs in and changes something, or VMs get added or removed, you're going to know that so you can stay in compliance. Again, this is a report that can be scheduled to run daily and sent to key stakeholders. When it comes to executing your DR plan, there's a number of built-in enterprise application verification steps in Orchestrator, and you can upload your own PowerShell scripts to do any kind of verification you need to. And again, the dynamic reporting is huge. It will keep you in compliance and can automatically be sent to your stakeholders. So when you put these 3 together, you really have a true disaster recovery solution for those mission critical workloads that is going to keep you in compliance, and we're going to be able to prove that we are protecting those workloads as we need to be at any time. So that is one of the benefits of having these 3 products working together. And the way we've packaged them in V11, which we'll go back to a little later, makes it very, very easy to consume for your customers. All right, let's move on to our technical feature. If anybody has any CDP questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and we will take a look at that. And we will, again, of course, take questions at the end. But now let's talk a little bit about hardened Linux repository, right? Immutability is something that Veeam has talked about quite a bit in the last year or so. We've also started to kind of cascade that throughout our tiers in the scale up backup repository, which I will show you. So we want to keep our data safe with a mutable and malware safe storage repository for your backups and prevent malicious encryption and deletion of your backup files. Very important in this day and age. So let's take a closer look at why we did that. Unfortunately, cyber threats are one of those things. It's not if you have a ransomware attack, it's when, right? And it could be ransomware, it could be anything. But malware is often looking at storage these days and trying to, encrypt your storage array. I have seen a lot of articles in the news about people using the same credentials everywhere in their environment. So, their storage arrays, their backup repositories, their backup servers are all gone because they use the same login and password anyway. Throughout a number of different ways, you can keep your data safe by making it immutable, right? So what do we actually mean by that? implement immutable backups. And this is in your performance tier, which we'll talk about a little bit, to prevent deletion and modification. Once you mark something immutable, nothing will change until it ages out. So use this with caution as well. It will keep your backups and copies safe for the designated retention period. So then you actually create a policy inside of Sober and say, okay, I want whatever tier to be immutable for X amount of days. When we talk about cloud, we'll talk about archive tier a little bit. It's important to keep costs in mind, right? Because if I say I want to keep my data for 3 years and I mark it immutable, yeah, that data is not going anywhere for 3 years, so you're paying it for 3 years. So again, proceed with caution for some of these things. And then of course it's storage agnostic, and we're integrating into a lot of the Linux features. And I saw there will be a breakout in some of this Linux stuff later on as well. A lot of the Linux features that we've released back in version 10 and 11. So Veeam has definitely been putting a lot of effort into the Linux space because a lot of our customers have point blank been asking us for it to support it better. So let's take a closer look at what this means. So why is this important, right? Malware safe repositories, and if we set them up properly, we're protected against insider threats as well. We don't want an account to get hijacked and basically be able to delete our files in our backup repository, right? You can see some of the screenshots here, right? Backup can be deleted only after this date and time because the immutable flag was set in Linux. This also protects you against malicious actors too, right? We see a lot of cases in the news of, well, I had some internal person that went rogue and they went and deleted stuff. Yeah, that's not going to happen here anymore. It's actually, I don't know if I have a slide on this. I can't remember. It's actually very simple to set up. We do have very detailed documentation, and there's only about 5 steps to get up and running. Again, proceed with caution because once you mark something immutable, it's immutable and you cannot delete it. So a couple of best practices, use a non-root account. And then remember, always use XFS on Linux to leverage block cloning and make everything faster. And this is when you create the repository, right? When you're creating the repository, you will say, make Veeam backups immutable for however long, 30 days, whatever makes sense for your organization. But again, you cannot actually do anything to that data for 30 days. Now, with this, we actually have immutability in multiple tiers here. And we're gonna, I'm gonna spoil it a little bit because I am actually gonna talk about archive tier separately, but I just wanted to get everything on one slide. And you can see these little locks throughout. That's kind of our symbol for immutability from start to finish. So that performance tier where you're keeping your most recent backups, most of my customers keep a week or 2 on that performance tier, right? Ultra fast restores. Now we have the hardened Linux repository that can be made immutable, right? So that would be rapid restore in the event of a cybersecurity event. Now, as we take advantage of Sober and scale out to object storage, when it comes to capacity tier and archive tier through S3 object lock, we also have the ability to make those backups immutable. So capacity tier and archive tier, we can make immutable as well. Once again, immutable means you can't delete it and you're stuck with it for whatever your retention period is. So let's take a little bit of a more look actually at AWS Glacier and Amazon Archive, right? So archive storage, right? Storage is expensive. I used to work for a storage company. I know how expensive it is from many, many different aspects, right? So a lot of customers, okay, I have this storage array in the back of my data center. It's my archive storage array. I still have to pay maintenance on it. Well, what happens after my 3 to 5 year maintenance contract is over? I need that data, but I need to keep it for a very long time. And yeah, and then I have to migrate that thing, right? A lot of customers want to get out of that game, and the cloud is a great way to do it. I also have a lot of customers that are interested in both archive tier and capacity tier because they're not really using the cloud yet, right? So I have some customers that are like all in on the cloud. They love the cloud. And other customers, sometimes the larger ones, are a little slower to move. And they're still coming on board with some of this cloud stuff, right? Storage is a great way to get your foot in the door in cloud, right? So we can save power and cooling costs and actually probably realize cost savings in general for storage by moving to the cloud. But if this is their first venture into the cloud, they'll learn a little bit, right? They'll get in there, configuring capacity tier, even from the cloud perspective, right? If I have to go into Amazon or Azure or Google and make a bucket or a container or whatever, that's something that's actually pretty easy to do. So it's a great way for them to start being comfortable with the cloud and the cloud processes and cloud operations. So they're starting to journey into the cloud by taking advantage of Sober. And then after they've become comfortable for that for a little while, then they say, well, I can actually restore to the cloud from Veeam. So let me take a couple test servers and restore to them to AWS or Azure and see how it goes and get comfortable with it. And if that doesn't work, you know what? I can just bring them back to my data center and it's not a big deal. So a lot of this for your customers that have been cloud resistant but have a need, this is a great way for them to start actually using the cloud little by little. So that's another reason why we have archive tier, right? Archive tier is has a huge cost benefit savings when we're talking about Glacier or Azure Archive for those cold storage costs to achieve lifecycle management of your backups. A lot of people have retention periods for however long they need to retain them for whatever various body governs them, right? And long-term archival is so expensive for so many reasons, and it can be very complex. Veeam makes it more cost-effective and much easier. So we're going to reduce the cost with policy-based management. Again, you can do this all with configuring Sober. So you configure Sober once, you set up your policies with how long you want the data to stay in each tier, and Veeam will take care of the rest. It's going to automatically move that data from hot to cold storage for you, and you won't even notice, right? Like you don't have to do anything. Again, it's set it and forget it. Now we're also offering Google Cloud Storage in the capacity tier. That was also a new feature of V11, meaning that no matter what cloud provider you want to work with, we have the big three right now. We have the big three for capacity tier, and we also have it from a perspective of cloud native backup cloud native backup products for Azure, Amazon, and AWS. So yes, and Google, Azure, Amazon, AWS, Google. That's too many. Anyway, so let's talk a little bit more about the archive tier. Let me just build out this slide real quick. So if you're kind of used to how our first iteration of capacity tier worked, it's very, very similar. Basically, what you would do is configure your policy of, hey, I want my data to live on each tier for X amount of time. And then on the back end, Veeam will archive that data out to the archive tier for you. And remember that Amazon S3 is also available to be made immutable. So again, really simple, easy to use, set it and forget it. Configuration, and again, there's a couple little settings in your Sober archive tier. Archive backups if the retention is above the minimal storage period. Move those aged GFS restore points. Again, super simple and easy to use, which a lot of customers, of course, enjoy. All right, so let's talk a little bit about expanded instant recovery. So I love Veeam's instant VM recovery technology. IAM VR version 2 was even more mind-blowing, but now we're bringing that to other areas as well, right? You don't always need to recover everything, and you don't always need to recover, you need to recover things at different speeds and feeds, right? So we're expanding instant VM recovery for SQL, Oracle, and NAS. Again, these are a lot of workloads that are mission critical. And RTO, especially when you're working with a huge database, has always kind of been an issue for many people. There's lots of stuff we can do, but it's all about seamlessly recovering even more of your workloads with instant recovery, right? So SQL, Oracle, again, critical. And you can recover a failed SQL or Oracle database right into production, regardless of its size, very low RTO, uninterrupted user access to NAS. So we'll basically just publish the file share directly from the backup and have at it. And again, if you're on that performance tier, super fast, right? A lot of people, I have customers doing a lot of like flash performance tiers, right? Just keeping that 7 days of recent data on flash so they're ready to go. And then of course, we have DR flexibility. And this is a big one for Hyper-V customers, and we'll talk about it again a little later. Recover anything to Hyper-V. So we had basically recover anything to vSphere in version 10. We brought that to Hyper-V in version 11 as well. So basically your restore options are endless. We're up to like 91 different restore options. And one of the things driving this, right, was the appetite for database downtime is not very high for most customers, right? The database is often the most critical aspect of the application, and it needs to come up first in many cases. So we're all about being online with your database, again, in seconds, physical and virtual servers, instant recovery for the database technology. And there is a little bit of a small downtime during the switchover, but it's obviously much quicker than having to restore a full server. And again, we have the same type of thing for file shares. We're going to grant users the ability to access their files faster after a disaster and publish those SMB shares instantly. And again, if you've ever done a restore with Veeam, you know how to do a restore with any of these instant recovery technologies. The look, feel of the engine and the UI is exactly the same. They're very, very simple to use and a simple uplift. So let's talk a little bit about BAS and DRAS with Service Provider Console version 5 for our service provider and large enterprise customers. As we know, and I come from very large environments, right? Large environments can be very hard to manage, and people want more and more and more, right? And our shift in remote work and reliance on the cloud has made it even more difficult to manage. So some of the key features of Service Provider Console version 5 are about remote backup management for server and endpoints, right? Now expanded to Linux and Mac, very important. Monitoring those cloud native workload backups that run in Amazon and Azure. You'll expect that GCP functionality to come later on. That was the last cloud native product released. So it will take a little longer to integrate into backup and replication and console. And then maximize storage savings when sending backups offsite to the cloud via Veeam Cloud Connect. So really, we're about being able to manage these assets through the console. And as you saw in the future slide as well, we'll be adding more and more of these in the future, making everything easier to manage and consume for service providers and large enterprises, right? We're there for them so they can provide our services as a service to their customers. So that was some of the key features of Veeam Backup and Replication version 11. But like I said, there's so much more. So I want to take a couple more minutes and try to just go through some of our favorite other features. And again, any questions you have, just drop them in the chat and I'm happy to address them. So let's see. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about add-ons, and I'm hammering add-ons home because I've worked with a lot of partners actually and distributors to really come up with a strategy for their customers, right? Because when we add things like Veeam 1 and VDRO to a solution, we're giving our customer more value. And if we sell it as a bundle, it's a minimal uplift. I think it's about 30% for a 30% uplift for VDRO on top of VAS, right? So for an extra 30%, the dollar amount is low, but the impact is very high. And it's a great way to make those deals bigger. It's also a great way to add a little services into the deal as well to make sure that you're helping the customer through everything. You're helping them with their DR consulting, all that kind of great stuff. So it's really just a great opportunity in general. And again, that service provider console is a huge add-on to make things easier to manage for large enterprises and for service providers. So Veeam 1 version 11, I just want to talk about a couple of my favorite features here. Obviously, we have that CDP monitoring functionality. That is huge. If anybody's using CDP, like no one should use CDP without an Orchestrator with it. It just builds such a powerful solution for your customers. More enhanced VMware Cloud Director support, agent for Mac support. We can now monitor database backup jobs. And something that's not in here is we actually added Azure as well to public cloud data protection. So if you're using those cloud native products, you can monitor the job status and what VMs are protected and unprotected with both AWS and Azure inside of Veeam 1 version 11. Veeam Disaster Recovery Orchestrator, right? So Orchestrator is about four things: CDP replicas, Veeam backups, and storage snapshots. We added support for Lenovo ThinkSystem DM storage arrays in addition to CDP in this release. And it's all about reliable recovery, automated testing with data lab tests, leveraging data labs. And again, that documentation is just a huge key piece for so many customers, being able to dynamically generate that disaster recovery report and documentation, keep them in compliance, and make sure they don't have to maintain that document anymore, right? That's a huge win for many of my customers. Additional backup capabilities. So again, we have so many things in backup and replication. I think I mentioned protecting the Mac endpoints, accelerated performance when writing to dedupe arrays, faster NAS backup. So we've integrated with change file tracking integration to make those NAS backups even faster. We have more additional recovery capabilities, right? So we now support vCloud Director site-to-site replication. That's a big one for a lot of our service providers. And instant recovery to Hyper-V. I keep on talking on this one because we can literally recover anything, anywhere at this point. And that's just, that's huge, right? So all those Hyper-V customers are rejoicing at this, right? I can bring my physical backups to Hyper-V, which basically means P2Vs become super, super easy for anything I still have lingering in my data center that's difficult to get rid of that I could virtualize. More cloud capabilities. So now we can natively protect our Azure workloads with Veeam Backup and Replication, so I can manage my jobs from the console. And now I have Google Cloud Platform support for the scale out backup repository. I cannot yet manage my Google Cloud native backups, backup and replication. That one is coming in version 12, as you saw on the previous slide. Additional automation. I've become a little bit of an automation geek with some of this stuff. New RESTful API for the Veeam backup server. Anybody who's been around Veeam for a long time knows you used to have to go through Enterprise Manager, and it was a little kludgy. Now that is integrated with the Veeam backup server. That's really great. Native plugin for vCloud Director. A lot of my customers are excited about that. And then again, we have some integration when it comes to databases as well. Some new database features that will make your DBAs very happy. And then really when we talk about Veeam backup and replication, it's about backup and recovery in cloud, right? We need to protect our data, we need to recover it, and we need to have the ability to basically go between clouds as we need to support our business, right? As you know, Veeam is very hardware agnostic. We don't care what you're backing it up to, what you're backing it up on. We just want to help you protect your data, and the same goes to cloud. We don't care what cloud you're in. We don't care what cloud you go to. We're here and dedicated to helping you protect that data and move it as you need to for your business, right? And we also have a lot of built-in features and functionality like automation, replication, data reuse through data labs and the data integration API, security. We have a whole SWAT team at Veeam Support dedicated to ransomware recovery. And again, integrating with those storage arrays that you have to make everything just perform a lot better. And I'm really driving the add-ons home, right? So Veeam Ability Suite, I want to remind you, is Veeam Backup and Replication in Veeam 1, right? And Veeam 1 is giving you powerful monitoring, analytics, and automation for not only your virtualized environment, right? A lot of people focus on, oh, Veeam 1 is a VMware monitoring tool. It's also giving you an unprecedented view into your Veeam environment, right? We have something called Veeam Intelligent Diagnostics, which actually actively looks at the logs on your Veeam servers, your proxy servers, your backup and replication server, your repositories, and looks for known errors, right? So when Veeam gets a lot of calls and says, oh, you know what, we have customers that are just always misconfiguring this one thing, and we want to put a definition into VID, Veeam Intelligent Diagnostics pulls those definitions from Veeam, runs in your environment, tells you potential issues before they happen, and more importantly, it tells you how to fix them. It'll give you a KB article, it'll tell you how to fix it, and you'll get a special Intelligent Diagnostics key that if a customer needs to open a support case, they put in the key, and when they speak to a support agent, they automatically know what's wrong in the environment, and they can really streamline the experience. Now, DR Pack, we can add Veeam Disaster Recovery Orchestrator to either VAS or VBR on its own and add that automated documentation, testing, and failover piece to Veeam Backup and Replication. So those are really easy ways to not only provide tremendous customer value, but to also increase the size of your deals, right? And additional services for your customers. I know that was a lot of material. So that is Veeam Backup and Replication version 11 in a nutshell, some of the key features and how we can hopefully make things better. And I have one question came in on the Hardened repo. So any plans to introduce a similar dedupe feature or Hardened Windows repository? That's a great question, and I don't know, but I can certainly go back and see. I didn't see it on the future slide. I haven't talked about it much, but I would love to see that kind of feature streamlined, of course, right? So again, this is version 1 of something. So I would love to see the same thing you're asking about, right? More streamlined efficiencies and maybe even Windows support, right? But I can try to do a little digging around. We're kind of in a lull right now, right? We just had this big release. We kind of know what's coming next time. But yeah, that's a great question. And that's some great feedback. I'll absolutely take that back.
Melissa, maybe this is Martin from Veeam, so I know it's an internal question, but maybe you can elaborate a bit on the cloud backup strategy.
Yeah, sure.
Does people actually have to install Veeam Backup Replication to do backup of clouds, or how is that?
Not, right? So we have 3 cloud native products. We have Veeam Backup for Azure, Veeam Backup for AWS, and Veeam Backup for Google Cloud Platform. Those are deployed from their respective cloud marketplaces, and they can run completely standalone in the cloud. If you have a customer that is not a Veeam customer, but they're using the cloud, they can absolutely use the Veeam cloud native products to protect their workloads. What they can then do is integrate with their on-prem VBR, right? So they can actually add their appliances to their VBR server for AWS and Azure at this point to do things like keep an eye on their jobs, edit their jobs, manage their jobs from the VBR console. And that also translates into Veeam 1 as well to monitor the job performance. And the big thing in Veeam 1 is you can get this report called the Unprotected VMs report. And basically it tells you, okay, we're connected to your Azure subscription, right? Here's the things you're backing up with Veeam, but here's all the things you're not protecting as well. So that's a really cool value add for Veeam 1 in the cloud as well. But no, you do not have to be a VBR customer to protect your cloud native workloads at all. If you are, you can integrate with it, but for those customers not using VBR, no, it's not a requirement at all.
Maybe also a little bit around the licensing part. Is there a free edition in the cloud?
Yeah,
or?
absolutely. That's a great question. So basically all of the cloud native products, you get 10 instances free forever. So anything up to 10 instances is completely free. And then you can also use your Veeam Universal license on top of that.
So it's a bring your own license to the cloud, right?
Yes, exactly. And it's the same vol, right? We're not going to charge you an extra vol to use the cloud. There's no cloud tax or anything like that. But like the kind of the 10 instances free is a great way for a lot of customers to start kicking the tires on it and to get a look and feel for the product. You can head right to any of the marketplaces and deploy it in just a few minutes.
Cool. So any more questions?
I think we probably have some questions when we do the breakouts. So
yeah,
then we could do the native languages.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Okay, so thank you very much for that great presentation, Melissa.
All right, thank you all very much for having me, and enjoy the rest of your sessions.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.